What is up, you guys? Welcome back to Ableton from Scratch, my free online course designed specifically for people with no prior experience using Ableton and no prior experience in music production. Over the last 3 sessions, we've learned how to navigate the software, how to write in a drum beat, and how to add in your bass line. Today we're going to get to dive into some more of the fun stuff, which is writing in your main lead melody, as well as how to write in some supporting melodies along with that. Let's dive into Ableton and see what we can learn. So here's our project from last week where we left off having written in the bass line. It sounds like this. Okay, and what I talked about last week is in perhaps finding some melodies to fill in these blank areas where the bass takes a pause, right? So we're going to talk today about doing your main lead melody, but also some supporting melodies. So what we want to do first, and you'll know from the preview that I posted last week, that I wrote in this melody here. And I'm going for something kind of dark and mystical here with this song. It's got a bit of a brooding, kind of pensive bass line. And we want to kind of have that aura of kind of mystical atmosphere for a deep house or progressive house track. So we'll see if I can write something better than that this time around. But let me just show you the process that I went through to get this instrument set up in terms of selecting a lead melody. So let's just close this one for now, add a new MIDI track, and see if we can go do this from scratch. And I'll take you through my process. To find a lead synth, I normally go to the operator instrument in Ableton. So that's right here. You can just double click and it's going to go on to that channel. So we're on channel 4, a MIDI channel. Let me just hit Command R to rename this and make it lead synth. Yeah, like cap lock, so it's easy to read from further away. All right, so I'll typically go into the operator folder and start browsing around. And for a lead synth, I'll sometimes go to piano and keys, perhaps guitar and plucked, or sometimes mallets. So you'll see that the actual lead synths that are in here are pretty aggressive and pretty edgy. Right, so you can hear that some of those are kind of aimed at a bit more maybe mainstream EDM music, stuff that takes a bit more of an aggressive tone. So I tend to stay in the plucked, piano, keys, and mallets category. So the sound that I had in the demo is this one here. It's called Rubber. Let's see what's near it. See if there's anything else we like more. I'm not going to stick with that, so I'm going to double click, and that's going to load down here into the operator instrument. And now I can play some notes on my MIDI keyboard. I'll go up an octave. Okay, so on its own, it sounds pretty cool. But for a lead synth, I know we're going to jazz that up with a bit of reverb and probably a bit of delay as well. So I'm just going to go to the audio effects column and I'm going to select the reverb first. You can double click or just drag that on with your mouse to down here. Let's hear how it sounds now. Okay, it's breathing a bit more nicely now. Maybe we don't need quite that much reverb signal being affected, so let's turn the dry wet down to around 40. Here's another nice little shortcut, guys. If you want to be able to more easily scroll to the, you can hold down the shift key. And when you drag your mouse on the knob, it moves it a lot slower. And you'll see for, like if I go to the decay time over here, you can get the 0.1s to the 0.10th decimal place a lot easier when you hold down the shift key. So just something to help you navigate the software. Okay, that sounds pretty nice. So then we'll put a little bit of delay maybe as well. Okay, that's a lot. So I'm going to dial back the feedback a little bit, which is kind of how long the echo is going to sustain itself for. So once you're ready to write something in, and I'll do this without my MIDI keyboard so that you guys can see what I'm doing, you just can highlight the section that you want. And again, it's Shift Command M, and a new sequence block will show up for you, and it automatically brings up your piano roll down here. So let's try and fill up a little bit of the space where the bass line is taking a bit of a pause so that we can kind of try and get these instruments speaking to one another. So to be honest guys, I just tried writing notes in with my cursor for about 5 minutes and I couldn't come up with anything that sounded decent. So I'm just going to start noodling around on the MIDI keyboard. I'm just showing you this because you're going to see that experimentation is a big part of the process here. Like unless you already know and have a specific melody in your head that you want to write out and transcribe, then that's great and you'll be off to the races. But sometimes if creativity is not just flowing in abundance, you need to kind of just start noodling around on your keyboard. That's another big reason why I'm a huge proponent of saying you should get a MIDI keyboard. As I said before in my past videos, they're pretty inexpensive. It's really going to help your workflow and your creative process. All right, let's record those few notes and see what else we can do. And I'm just hitting R on my keyboard to start recording because remember from the past, in my first video, I showed you how to key map shortcuts on your keyboard. So if you go to Command K, you can see I've already pressed on the record button and then pressed R on the keyboard, which assigned it. Command K to get out of there, but that's how you would go about setting that up. So it's nice and easy for me. I can keep my hand hovering over the piano keys and I can hit R on the keyboard, it'll count me in. Okay, I like that first cluster of notes. I'm going to quantize that. So I'm just going to select those and hit Command U, which is going to snap them to the grid. I'll just make sure they're still in place before I move on to work on the other sections of notes. Let's just quantize all that and see how it does. Command U. Now this still needs some work in terms of timing and melody, but already I can tell I'm not going to like this better than what I did last week, so I'm just going to go back and pull that clip in, and let's have a look at it. Okay, and now I think it's probably going to sound better if I run this low part of the melody first before letting it climb up to the higher part of the melody. So I actually want to switch these two sets of measures around. So what you can do to clip this, since this was recorded all as one, you can see it's one sequencer block. When you put your cursor anywhere on one of these, if you just hit Command E, it's going to splice it for you. So now you can see I can move that to here, just out of the way for a moment. And I want to bring this guy over here because I want it to play second. And I'll just drag this one into first position. That's sounding pretty good. I think I'd like to give a little bit more kind of life and accent to some of these notes near the end of each measure. So I'm going to boost the velocity, which is right down here on some of these. Let's just play this again. Right, so that note there, I think I'd like to boost a little bit. So again, if you go down, if you select the note and then you can come down here and drag the velocity marker up, or you can hover over it. I want to boost this one a little too. And if you hit Command and hover your mouse on it, you're going to get those little arrows, and now you can drag it up as well. And let's hear how that sounds now. Okay, and over here at the end, I'd like to do the same on this clip for those higher notes. I'm gonna boost that guy. And this guy here. That's better. That just kind of gives the end of the measure, or the end of that phrase, a little bit of punch. This is the time where I kind of consider, do I want this one melody to just keep going for most of the song? Do I really want it to be the sole focus of the song? Or do I think that might get a bit too repetitive and a bit too, too boring? So maybe I'll clip these away here. And maybe we can alternate with another melody, for example. So in my prep time, I had prepared another sound, which is another instrument patch from Ableton. Kind of a typical Juno sounding synth. And maybe we can write in some kind of melody for that. I'll just move that up, so that's going to be the next track in line. And let's name this one supporting synth. Command R to rename. Now if you want to be able to read all of these names, you can drag this out wider. Okay, so the idea here is that perhaps these sounds will alternate. So this sound will play the lead melody for 8 measures, as you can see. And then this sound is going to play something for 8 measures. And then they're going to alternate as the song continues. And again, to avoid boring you guys to death while I actually write a decent melody, which can take some time, I've just copied and pasted in what I've prepared in advance of this. And here's how that melody sounds. Now back to the other sound. So I'll copy and paste this as well and put it over here. So now we have that alternating concept that I mentioned. Okay, so that's sounding pretty good, but one thing you'll notice is that the song might sound a little bit empty, a little bit hollow. Like this isn't going to be all of the melody that we're going to have. We want to have a few other supporting sounds, but we don't want them to be too active or too distracting. We don't want them playing a lot of different notes. So what we're talking about here is kind of a background pad. So I've got one that I found earlier, but let me just show you. I'll get rid of this extra channel and I'll go find a new pad with a new MIDI track by right-clicking there to get a new MIDI track. And when we come over to the instruments and go into operator, you will see an area called pads. And these are notes, or instruments rather, that are kind of intended to be sort of longer, sustained, more kind of background, more kind of atmospheric sounds. So take a listen to a few of these. That one's a bit too harsh. That might be okay. That might be right. Actually, I like that one. So let's double click that. And we might do a chord. Let's just see what sounds good by testing out on the keyboard. Alright, that's sounding pretty good. The volume might be a bit loud on that, so I'm going to come down here and just turn that down maybe 2 dBs. And again, if you want this to be more precise, hit Shift, and now that's going to let me to more precisely drag that down to 2 dB precisely. Alright, let's press record and try and count in and play out that melody, something similar to what I just played before. Okay, that was not too bad. I think there was one note out of place there that we can go in and correct. So let's firstly just trim this clip up to the right measure. Double click to bring up the piano roll. And there's our notes. Let's Command A to select all and Command U to quantize them. Now let's listen back. I think this note here might be a bit out of place. Yes, that's better. Let's move these guys to their correct positions. Make that one a bit longer. With pads, it's sometimes good to overlap the notes a little too, so you can drag these out each. So there's a little bit of overlap onto the next note. Like so. That one's pretty good. A little longer. Let's hear that alone. Okay, that's sounding pretty good. Shift tab to get rid of that piano roll. Let's check on the volume level again. That's probably a bit loud. I'll turn this down by another dB. One more dB still. Turn up the lead synth a little bit. And I'll duplicate this pad by hitting Command D. And I also had prepared a pad that was a bit lower and more kind of gritty to fill up a bit of the low end of the song. It sounds like this. Let me change colors here so we don't have blue and blue next to each other. So I'm wondering if this might be a song where it might actually sound good to have two pads. Let's put this to the start and see how that one sounds. Okay, that sounded pretty good. I think that might work. If we want to hear just the two pads together, you can come over here and solo them both individually but together. So press the S on one and then holding down Command, hit the S on the other, and now we're going to have just those two songs, or those two tracks rather, playing for us. Let's hear that. Okay, yeah, those pads are working pretty well together. I think we're getting a few harmonies there. Let's hear it back from the beginning with everything. That kick is sounding a little bit too quiet. Let's turn up the kick. That's better. Okay, this lead synth is still sounding a bit quiet to me. Let's come down here to the instrument and turn it up from here then. So let's have a final listen. pretty happy with that. I like how the purple synth up here is kind of being complemented by the supporting synth, the yellow synth down here. They're not playing at the same time, so they're not fighting with one another, but we're not just relying on one simple melody looped over and over again, because electronic dance music is pretty repetitive, and some songs can get pretty boring. So lately I've found that a lot of the tracks I've been working on have felt a bit too repetitive to me. So I've been trying to take more active steps to kind of break up that repetition and try and add a new interesting melody that's complementary to the main focus of the song. So this is getting close to something you can really start to work off of and build out a track from. We're also going to next week talk about adding some effects and accents to try and bring the track a bit more life, a bit more energy, and also to help take some further steps to fight against the kind of repetitive nature of this genre of music. But this is a pretty solid base, so I think we can continue working off this as a song, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here next session. Thanks for tuning in.